Good morning, friends. I hope you had a wonderful weekend, and I hope you are enjoying spending your Monday with me. Hey, Piper. I wanted to share some exciting news that happened over the weekend. Our milk cow, Penny, was due on the 29th, so not until this upcoming Sunday. Friday morning, my husband and I woke up at 4:30 to the sound of Penny mooing very strangely. She didn't sound good. So my husband got out here before I did, and I got out just in time to see her push the second calf out. Hey, girl. So she had two calves, a bull calf and a heifer calf. The bull is the darker one. We've named him Rusty, and the heifer calf is Mabel. Unfortunately, Penny, having carried twins, gave the illusion of her carrying some extra weight. She and Piper like to play along the fence line. But now that she has delivered both calves, she is looking awfully skinny. So we have upped her feed. She's got free access to hay and water. And Peaches, which is the calf that we got when we bought Penny, and now she's 8 months old. She wasn't Penny's calf. It was just a calf that we got so that we could calf share. She is being a very sweet surrogate mama, and the calves seem to love her also. Mama. Yesterday, we thought that Penny was possibly rejecting Mabel and only letting Rusty nurse, but thankfully we were wrong, and they are both nursing. In fact, this morning when I looked out my bedroom window, I could see them both nursing at the same time. It was the sweetest sight. So Penny has been an amazing mama, and we are excited to have these baby calves and fresh milk again.
This past weekend was one of the busiest we've had in a long time. It was kind of torturous because there was so much. As you can see here, my laundry room has been a disaster for weeks, honestly. I just haven't had the time to tackle it. I have laundry backed up, stinky football equipment everywhere. So this is kind of priority number one for today, in addition to some food and meal prepping. I got into the habit of throwing all of our dirty towels and rags into the laundry room sink, as long as I don't need it at the moment, because the rags that we use to clean up Penny before we milk, or I might use it to clean off the countertop if a little bit of milk is spilled when I'm filtering it, those towels end up smelling really sour. So when the sink gets full, I go ahead and run a load of towels. It's just a good reminder, and it keeps any damp towels or rags out of our regular laundry hamper where there aren't any other wet things. While there were some things in the laundry room that just needed to be taken out to the trash, like quite a bit of cardboard, there was also just a lot of stuff that didn't belong in there. Next on the list was changing our bed sheets. Back when we were newly married and incredibly poor, we never had more than one set of sheets for our bed, ever. I mean, king-size sheets are expensive anyways. I would usually go to TJ Maxx or Marshall's and try to find them, for $20 or $30, but they were definitely super low quality. Now our favorite sheets are peach skin sheets. It's just a website online, and their sheets are incredibly soft, and they last us a good several years before I end up needing to replace them. But it's really nice to have two sets of sheets now. One thing that is guaranteed to happen on weeks that are super busy is laundry piles up. And I don't even mean dirty laundry, but clean laundry. Here's the current state of my broccoli sprouts. Honestly, I ended up completely forgetting about my first jar of broccoli sprouts. They ended up in a cabinet, forgotten about, and they sprouted and just became compacted in the bottom of the jar. So I had to pry them out with a fork and start over. So I'm not even sure what day this is for these sprouts, but I think there's probably maybe 2 days left, and they will be ready to be rinsed, put in the fridge, and used. All right, moving on to some food prep for the week. This is my Instant Pot sous vide. It is working its way up to 140 degrees, and I have 1.5 pork tenderloins in here that will go for about 4 or 5 hours. My husband and I are trying to stick with a low-carb diet right now, so I am just prepping some meat for us to have with some veggies for dinner tonight and tomorrow night, and then I will make calzones for my kids to have for supper tonight. So let's get that prepped. This probably doesn't make any logical sense, but I don't like to start on a new project until I have a clean work surface, even though I am more than likely going to dirty it up again. But I could not face this filthy stovetop any longer. It only took a few minutes to clean, and now we're ready to get started. Yikes. I also need to clean out the fridge some. You can see my big box of 5 dozen eggs because ours have slowed down laying so much, and that box is down to a reasonable price again. There are some leftovers in here that need to go out to the chickens. I need to take those brown bananas and turn them into banana muffins and do some meal prep for today. So let's go ahead and take this Italian sausage out. We will brown it up and get our calzone filling going. I do love to multitask in the kitchen, so while I get this sausage going, I will also get the banana muffins started, and then I will mix up the rest of the calzone filling that we will add this sausage to. If you are new here, I like to keep some of my most frequently used recipes inside my kitchen cabinet on the doors. So this is my banana bread recipe. You can take a screenshot if you'd like. And basically with just about any baking recipe, you're going to put your dry ingredients together first, then your wet ingredients separately, and then slowly combine them. And I believe I bake at 350 until it's finished. It's hard to say your times. It depends on your loaf pans or whether you do muffins. I think muffins take about 18 minutes. I don't typically like to wait until the bananas are this brown and mushy because they are just no fun to peel. So I usually mix together the bananas, melted butter, sugar, and eggs first while I get my dry ingredients mixed together. And then I go ahead, I add all of mine at one time, particularly when I'm just making a single batch, which is what this is. I have 2 muffin pans, and I've never really needed more than this. I think with 7 bananas and not doubling the recipe, I should get 2 dozen muffins. I like to stay stocked up on these white paper muffin liners. I do have some silicone ones, but they are such a pain to wash. I don't use them very often. These come in like a pack of 100 for $1 at Walmart. I have always found that your 1/4 cup measuring cup is the perfect size for muffins. All right, our sausage has cooled down enough to add it to our bowl. I didn't drain it because there's not a whole lot of grease. And I'm going to use that grease to cook, there's probably a little over a tablespoon. So I'll drain a little bit of it and then I'll use the rest to cook the onion. To the sausage, we are going to add 1 diced onion that I will saute in that skillet, and then 1/2 teaspoon of Italian seasoning, 1/4 teaspoon of red pepper flakes, 15 ounces of ricotta cheese, which this is 32 ounces, so I will use half. And I'll probably freeze the other half. This is about the only thing I ever use ricotta for, aside from lasagna, but I don't make lasagna very often. 1.5 cups of shredded mozzarella, 1/2 cup of shredded Parmesan, a tablespoon of dried parsley, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and 2 eggs. After cutting this large onion in half, I decided to only use half of it in the calzone mixture. I'll save the other half for something later this week. I wanted to go ahead and get all of the cheese shredded up and mixed in with the sausage before the onions were finished. And of course, I would need to let them cool, otherwise all the cheese would melt. While I waited on the onions to caramelize, I decided to go ahead and cut up the kielbasa that I plan to use tomorrow night with cabbage and kielbasa for dinner. And I'm going to go ahead and brown them in the skillet. I'm going to need the bowl for my KitchenAid mixer in order to mix up the dough for our pizza crust, so I'm going ahead and hand washing whatever dishes are still in the sink now. I really like to clean as I go, so I don't have a big disaster to clean up when I'm finished and exhausted from cooking. I wanted to note that when I ever use a cutting board for raw meat or something that could really make you sick, I make sure to run it through the dishwasher, or if I'm going to hand wash it, I then spray it with my Force of Nature spray, which is apparently, supposedly, just as effective as bleach, and I let that air dry to make sure that any and all pathogens and bacteria has been killed. The kielbasa is browning on medium-low heat because I have a very bad habit of walking away from kielbasa that is in the skillet and ending up burning it. And I don't want any charred black pieces of kielbasa mixed in with all of that light cabbage. My kids will not have it. So I've got it going over medium-low and I'm trying to stir it often. It smells amazing. I also decided to go ahead and add some of these caramelized onions to the sausage. It's just going to make the flavor of our cabbage and kielbasa even better. And I think this was just a little too much onion for a single batch of calzones. The muffins are out of the oven. Now I'm just going to pop them out of here so they can cool a little faster. And then I have to get them out of sight before my kids get back home. My teenagers are at a chorus and drama class right now. And my two little ones will be home around 4. And if I don't put these away, half of them or more will be gone by 4:30. Uh-oh, missed a piece. So these will be used for breakfast and snacks. Probably just tomorrow. I mean, I've got 6 who will be sharing 24 muffins. So that would be 4 each. I guess we could probably stretch it to 2 days. I usually limit them to 2 muffins and they need some protein with it as well, like an egg or some sausage. I'm gonna add the onions. I think they've adequately cooled. And then I'll get started on the dough, which is just my pizza crust recipe. I will leave the link in the description for Pioneer Woman's Easy Calzones, but she actually suggests that you use frozen dinner rolls, let them defrost and roll them out. But I find it easier to just make my homemade pizza dough and then I can control the size of the calzones. To just about every bread recipe that I have, you start with your sweetener. In this case, it's 3 tablespoons of sugar. Sometimes it's honey. And then add a tablespoon of yeast. And we'll leave that for a few minutes to activate the yeast. All right, I don't plan to make the cabbage and kielbasa until probably Wednesday. So I'm going to go ahead, now that the sausage is mostly cooled, I'm going to go ahead and transfer this over to this container. And I'm not draining any of the grease off because that will help flavor and season the cabbage. And since all of this meat is already browned, and we've already added the onion, all I'll have to do on Wednesday is dump everything in the pot together. The chopped cabbage, the sausage, and the onion. Now, I will let this finish cooling. It is a little hotter than I thought it was before I stick it in the fridge. Now that the yeast is nice and frothy, we will add a heaping tablespoon of salt, about 3 tablespoons of oil, or you could do melted butter. And I like to mix this with a few cups of flour before I add some Italian seasoning. That's optional. For something like pizza crust and calzones, it just adds a little bit more flavor to your dough. As I've shared in the past, the more you make bread or any kind of dough like this, the more you will be able to read your dough on your own. So I always add flour a few cups at a time until it starts to come away from the sides and form a dough ball. And then I might only add 1 cup or half a cup at a time. And eventually your dough is going to start firming up a bit and all of it will start to pull away from the sides. That is when you know it's just about finished. All right, I let it knead for a few minutes. It's sticky, but not sticking to my hands. Now we are going to stick this dough in the oven. Well, normally I would stick it in the bottom oven on the bread proof setting, but the bottom oven is still pretty hot from the muffins. So I think I'm going to leave it out on the counter with a towel over it until the oven adequately cools off. And then we'll be ready to make these calzones. I have taken the 1.5 pork tenderloins out of the sous vide and drained any juices that were in the bag. And now I'm going to sear it on all sides in a super hot cast iron skillet. If you've never checked out using a sous vide, especially for cooking your meat, I would highly suggest you check out some YouTube channels that specialize in all different types of sous vide recipes. It's a game changer for cooking meat. My very favorite thing, obviously, to cook with it is the pork tenderloin. It just ends up being the perfect cut for this type of cooking, in my opinion. Something like a filet mignon would also be amazing, but we don't buy those very often. Now I'm going to put these on a cutting board and let them rest for about 10 or 15 minutes before I slice them up and then let them cool and stick them in the fridge for Josh and I to eat over the next couple of nights. I actually decided to go ahead and deglaze this pan while it's still hot. One of my twins is on dish duty this week, and it's no one's favorite task to wash the cast iron skillets. So I'm just going to pour a little bit of water in there. If I was making gravy, this would be the most delicious base. All right, now all I have to do is rinse it and dry it. People use a variety of methods to keep their cast iron clean and also seasoned. I have never shied away from using water in my cast iron. I do not use soap, but we just use a food scraper to get all of the food out, and then I will use a clean sponge that's wet to finish cleaning the skillet. I pop it back on the stove top with like medium-high heat. If there's any water left from washing, it will evaporate, and then I add about a tablespoon of oil, and when the skillet gets nice and hot, I will spread all of that oil around the bottom of the pan as well as the sides with a rubber spatula. And then when they cool, I put them away. The meat has been resting for about 10 minutes. Now I'm going to slice it up. This is our very favorite way to use our sous vide and to eat pork tenderloin. Now, if we were not low carb, we would serve this with mashed potatoes, or when the pork tenderloin has been put in the refrigerator and it's cold, it's really good on like a Hawaiian roll as like a pork slider. So good. All I seasoned it with this time was some homemade seasoned salt. You can Google seasoned salt recipe or copycat Lowry's seasoned salt. It's nice and simple to make, and I just keep it in a mason jar in our spice cabinet. Look at that. So tender. I've got my muffins packaged up, 1 dozen per bag, and I think I'm gonna go put them in the pantry behind the door where they won't be found. As we get ready to assemble our calzones, I went ahead and got out some flour for dusting our work surface. water, which I use my fingertips to run along the edges of the calzones before I seal them shut, and then a little egg wash to go on top before they go in the oven. We are ready to start assembling these. I start by flouring my work surface. Got my dough over here, and I completely just eyeball this. I don't want to make these too big because I intend to send one with each of my girls tomorrow when they go to co-op for the day. So let's see what this size dough makes. It certainly does not have to be uniform. It helps to be in a rectangle. This might be a little too small for my girls, but it will probably be just right for my two little ones. So you want it to be a little longer than it is wide so that you can seal it up like a calzone. All right, I'll add the filling. My family has always really liked that I add a few pepperoni to each of our calzones. I just pulled this pepperoni out of the freezer, so it's still partially frozen. Now I just use my fingertips to just barely wet along the edges. This helps the dough to stick, and I try to line it up as perfectly as I can. Obviously, you just need to keep your hands washed because this is a very literal, hands-on recipe. I don't ever have any problem with them coming unsealed while they're baking. All right, so I'm gonna put this on the parchment paper on our baking pan. I've got 3 sheet pans already lined with parchment paper. Before I stick them in the oven, I will put a thin slit through the top so that they can breathe as they bake, and I will also put the egg wash on before I stick it in. I've got both of my ovens preheating to 450. This is actually the Pioneer Woman's recipe for easy calzones. I tried it for the first time many years ago when I did a really big freezer cooking day with several friends. I think there were 7 or 8 of us. Man, did we make a lot of food that day. That was really fun, and it was amazing to go home with boxes and boxes of food for our freezer. I would love to plan another one of those someday soon. Before I stick this first batch in the oven, I will give it just a very light egg wash. This helps it get nice and golden in the oven. And as I said before, then I will cut a small slit or 2 through the center, which helps the steam to release through the center instead of trying to bust one of these seams open. I think that helps as to why I don't usually have a problem with the seams busting. Wow, I'm making a mess. I should have an apron on. Then you just take a sharp knife and in it goes at 450 degrees. This was quite an ambitious dinner to plan for a Monday night, but my kids were so excited when they got home from school. It was delicious. My husband and I did not partake. We had some of that pork tenderloin and some vegetables, and it was delicious. And this is what my kitchen looked like by the time my kids got home from school, and it felt so good to have dinner finished and the kitchen cleaned up before we even started on homework. Thank you for spending another Monday with me. I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for watching.